this episode of Viral Rewind, we're revisiting another email worm, the MeltingScreen worm. And you might have noticed at the beginning of the video here that the intro has changed. Yeah, there's been a bit of a issue with the old one, so now I'm going to be using this one here that you saw from now on. Anyway, to recap MeltingScreen, of course you can look back at the original video, which I'll have in the description there. MeltingScreen is an email worm that comes in through an email that you receive with the MeltingScreen worm attached. And when you run it, it does two things. Number one, it mass mails itself to whatever email addresses it can find on the computer. And the second thing is that it installs itself to the system, namely in the Windows directory, replacing some Windows applications behaving like a companion virus. And when you try to run one of these programs that's been replaced by MeltingScreen changes the associations at random. So every time you try to run the program that's infected with MeltingScreen, you don't get the actual program, you actually get an entirely different program in that same Windows directory that comes up in its place. And whether it's infected or not, if it's not infected, it will get infected. If it's infected, well, then it just opens the program with the infection and still repeats its spreading routine until the entire Windows applications are pretty much infected, and then you get the MeltingScreen payload, which again you'll see in the original video. So we're looking solely at the email spreading routine of MeltingScreen for this video. So we've got a MeltingScreen on the desktop here, just showing its properties dialog box. I do have Microsoft Outlook at the ready here with my 4 email boxes all set up through Mercury 32, just running in the background here as well. So we've got our SMTP server and our core processor, which are the two things we're going to pay attention to when MeltingScreen gets installed. This over here is just monitoring the IMAP processes for checking email on those 4 addresses. So let me minimize this and Outlook. And let's load up MeltingScreen. So we double clicked on it, open up Mercury 32, we see activity on the SMTP server. Now we got the messages waiting to get sent out, and it just sent them there to all 4 email addresses I have stored in the Outlook address book. So that is MeltingScreen there performing its email spreading routine. And if we go into Outlook, we should have some new messages. Wait for it to do a send receive here. And we can do it right here. And here is our messages, and it's the same across all of them. We get fantastic screensaver in the subject line with an attachment. If we open this email message, our message reads, and of course it comes from the primary email here, fantastic screensaver. Hello, my friend. Attached is my newest and funniest screensaver. I named it MeltingScreen. Test it and tell me what you think. Have a nice day, my friend. And then there's a little interesting PS here at the bottom. Please install the Runtime Library for Visual Basic 5.0 before you run the screensaver. And that's a key little thing that it's interesting to have in the email here, because MeltingScreen relies on Visual Basic 5.0 at least being installed on the system for it to run. If you don't have Visual Basic 5.0 or later installed on the system, when you try to run MeltingScreen, it will actually give you an error dialog box, and MeltingScreen will not actually run. So it's kind of an interesting little safeguard if you don't have Visual Basic on, but the author of MeltingScreen put this in here to make sure that the MeltingScreen worm will run on your computer by ensuring you got Visual Basic 5 installed first. Again, one of those little interesting things. And then here is MeltingScreen attached to the email, which again is how you would get it, and then if you run it from the email, it will do exactly what we just did here. And as before, if we look in the Windows directory, we will find some applications have been replaced by MeltingScreen, which again we go in depth about this in the original video. We just have to look for a snowflake icon, and usually hardware info is one of the first ones infected by MeltingScreen. And if we try to run hardware info, it always tries to go to DOSPrep.first, which infects that. And we run it again, and again, and again. We'll eventually get different programs popping up, like Smart Drive. So, and of course you see how their icons changing. So again, we go in depth with this on MeltingScreen. But really the main thing was just looking at the email spreading routine of MeltingScreen here. And MeltingScreen is smart enough to not have to have the MeltingScreen.exe name on its program, because as you saw, we ran it pretty much with the original file name email worm win32 MeltingScreen.exe. So it's not like the Pikachu that we looked at where the name has to be identical to how it is in the email attachment. So it's smart enough on that. And the second thing is it does not send multiple emails out. So it runs its email spreading routine once when you initially install it, and then every subsequent time that you have it running on the system infecting files, it just infects files. It does not send emails out again. So that is basically it for the revisit of the MeltingScreen email worm, looking at the email spreading routine.